the ZBrush Summit to maybe start a channel called Pablo Pavlovich. That would be fun. All right, so I think it might be fixed. Not everywhere though. I'll have to do it manually for every channel, I think. All right, give me 1 second. I'll try to sort this out. I mean, the main one, it is, I think it's working, which is YouTube. I don't know if there's anyone watching from the other channels. Yeah, we'll see what happens. All right, so I'm just gonna go ahead and get started. It doesn't really matter. So if you don't know who you're watching, just my name is just below. Anyway. All right, cool. So welcome everyone. Glad that you're here. It's been a long time since my last stream. I think the last thing that I did was like the tiny robot, and we were doing something with SimOda, so like hard surface stuff. That was kind of like the last set of streams that I did, and then I just got like really busy with the planning of the new course, the Extra Mile. I can tell you all about it later on, because we are opening for enrollment next week, which is really exciting. It's been almost a year basically planning stuff, but we're nearly there. So really exciting stuff. All right, so Pixologic. All right, cool. All righty. All right, so for today, I thought we'll just get back into it with some something well, not different, but like different from what we did last time, a couple of streams ago. So I'm gonna start with a creature design. So I just have these beluga whales and other creepy stuff as a reference. So I want to create some kind of like sea creature, something weird that sort of like resembles these type of animals. They're really cool, and they have this weird shape that kind of like resemble like the mermaids, or like, I don't know. I just think it's, look at this. I just think it will be like an interesting reference point to get started with a creature. And then of course my idea, like with all the streams, is just to give you different tips and tricks, things that you can do to essentially get started with any concept or anything that you wanna make. So I'm gonna give you some tips and some tricks, and hopefully we can get something out of this stream. So I'm gonna start with actually we could start with this sphere, but I'm gonna probably go ahead and get something going. Actually, I'm gonna show you with the sea spheres, because I'm gonna show you kind of like the first really cool technique, or like a trick that might be interesting for you. So this is obviously the sea sphere. I'm gonna enable symmetry, and currently this is the only thing that I have at the moment. So activate symmetry, and I'm gonna go ahead and click and drag to add a new one at the top and another one at the bottom. So whenever I start with a creature design or a character, something that has basically a torso and legs or a tail or something at the bottom, basically something that has hips, I always do this. So the one here in the center will be my center point, like the hips of the character, and then at the top it will be the torso, and below will be whether it is a tail or like legs, or whatever it is. I'll show you why in a second. So I'm gonna add another one here. This is gonna be kind of like the end of the tail, and for this one I'm just gonna do kind of like some neck stuff. All right, so I'm gonna push the neck up and the torso up as well, and then I'm gonna push the hips down. More than the hips, actually, it's kind of like the stomach. So yeah, the hips are these ones actually. If I was to make like a character with legs, so I'm gonna push this down, try to get some sort of proportions, something that I like, and then these ones in the middle, just to generate that sort of bending. So this will be the tail of the creature. And this is still pretty skinny. I want to make something a bit chunkier, I think. But that's what the next technique is all about. So I'm going to click on, I have symmetry enabled again. So I'm going to click and drag on the side, and this will basically build some kind of deltoids, maybe something for the shoulders. I'm going to click and drag from the scale just to scale that up. Then back to draw, click again, and that will create some sort of arms or like fins. Again, at the moment, I'm just looking at the reference as a starting point, but I don't have anything in mind just yet. So we're kind of like designing as we go. And let's go ahead and click on draw again. All right, so right now we have something that I think looks pretty decent. Maybe let's actually have some sort of like wrist. Although, again, if they're gonna be some kind of fins, this is not necessarily humanoid. I mean, it's kind of like humanoid, I suppose. But yeah, this is something to give you an idea of where we can go with this creature. And I really like to do this because, as you can see, it's really quick. Another thing I like to do at this point that I have the C-spheres, and to be able to judge the proportions and whether or not the overall silhouette is reading well, is to turn on either my thumbnail. That's why I have it here. You see this one here on the top left. Yep, you can see that. If I go ahead and click and drag from it, is going to scale it. You can do the same thing from the preference palette. Let's see, thumbnail here. So you have this size slider. So you can do the same thing here, but I just find it like really easy. In case you didn't know, you can literally just click on top of that thumbnail and drag it and just basically scale it up. The other thing that you can do is change the color of the background. So in my case, I don't have it in my UI, but you could have it in your UI if you wanted to. In the preference, you see we have this background color. If I click and drag towards the black color, it basically turns anything that was, it inverts the color. So it was black on white, and it just changes to white on black. And anything that is color black in ZBrush is going to be rendered as transparent. So now this is kind of like a transparent object. I just find it a little bit more useful. But basically, I can just start like rotating my character around and look at just the silhouette. So that's one way of doing it. I'm going to turn it off. The other way that I find really valuable is just to go to flat and select a black color, and potentially, you could also change the background color, but I think this is fine. I mean, you can just go for or do it the opposite way. Just have a white color and then have a black background. That's weird. I don't know what this is, but some kind of bug. All right, but basically we have now a background that is black, and then we have this white silhouette. I'd rather just stick with the, with the normal color, and I'm gonna go for a black color, like so. And I'm just clicking on this flat that you can see, just give me this flat shadeless version. That is just going to the render palette, and it is switching from preview to flat. That's all it is doing. So this is exactly what I have here in my UI, and it is just clicking on preview to visualize the usual method of sculpting, let's say, that I use the most, and then flat with a black color so that I can have the silhouette. So now I can interact with the silhouette. So for instance, here at the bottom, let me actually bring in my Epic pen. That will probably give you a better idea of what I'm trying to go with this. And by the way, guys, if there is anyone in the Twitch channel or the other ones, like I think Facebook or something, just let me know. I want to make sure that, this is working everywhere. All right, Epic pen, here we go. All right, so if you look at this character from this angle, there's not enough contrast, I think, or there's not enough balance. So all of these portions here are kind of like the same. Like you could just, cut it up in pieces, and they're all roughly the same length, the same thickness. So that makes it a little bit boring. It's not that it's bad, but I prefer to just work with the contrast since the beginning in the proportions and things like that. So what I would like to do, and I'll show you this first, and then we'll just go ahead and do it. And this is the reason why I like the Z-spheres so much, because it's very quick to do this sort of iteration at an earlier stage. I will probably just make this a little bit thicker, right? And then just play around with something that sort of goes into like a smaller, like a tail or something like that. And that way we can sort of like work on the chunkier bit at the top. So now if I go for something more like that, it's going to be, in terms of like simplified proportions or shapes, will be like, let's say, a sphere like that, maybe another one like this, and then a tiny one and a tiny one, right? So in terms of like size, they're all different, and the proportions or the let's say the, how would you call that? The proportions, so the space that the size that they cast on your retina or in the screen is going to shift quite a bit. So the size obviously is changing, but the way that the overall shape is read by anyone is going to be completely different from what I have here. So this is the main goal of working this way, or at least at this early stage with these Z-spheres. So what I can do is go to scale, and just literally from this sort of thumbnail thing, just scale that down, and then start scaling things. I kind of like tell where things are at the moment because they're very pronounced, like the shift or like the angles. And then I can take the move brush. In fact, let's go ahead and draw a couple more in there, and then let's start doing that sort of shape that I sort of hinted at. I think I cleared it, but anyway, it's kind of like something like this. There we go. So that makes it, I think, a little bit more interesting. Maybe we can add a couple more just in between. The more Z-spheres that I add doesn't necessarily mean that I'm adding more geometry at this point, although it will. But it just means that I can sort of remove that sort of sharp edge, and it's a bit more rounded. All right, so now that I have something that it's, I think, a little bit more interesting, even though I can still push the thickness and the the size at the top, I'm gonna go back to preview and to a white color, and we can just push this down a bit. Let's see, in fact, let's add a new one, so we can push maybe the chest down or back a bit, and scale the belly area. All right, so this is one of the things that I wanted to cover, and this is the reason why I usually start with this sort of Z-sphere in the middle, and then just go either up or down, right? So the idea really is that if you start with this as the midpoint, then you'll have, let me just change to larger side. If you look at these two lines here, or these two cones, from that center, so let's say that this is the center, and then you have these cones, right? So that means that I can have an entire, whatever this is, an entire chain of Z-spheres here, and a different one or independent chain here. And for practical purposes, I mean, this is what is happening really, but for practical purposes, what that means is that if I take the move brush and I, let's say, click on the one right below it, or in the connection between the Z-spheres right below the center point, I can affect my entire, tail in this case, or like the bottom part. Let's undo that. And if I click on the top one, I can affect my entire. This is like a good shoulder exercise. Actually, that's that's cool. So this is the type of thing that, if you spend a lot of time in your computer, this shoulder exercise. Anyway, this is happening just because I have the setup of the Z-spheres. So that means that I can control or affect the top hierarchy and the bottom hierarchy independently. Because if I have, let's say if I start this chain from the top, also from the bottom, top or bottom, it doesn't matter. When I click on something like this, it's going to affect absolutely the entire character, and that's not what I want. All right, so that's pretty much it. Now let's go ahead into start with something a little bit more interesting. I'm gonna go ahead and switch to the skin shade 4, just a cleaner material, like something that shows colors a little bit better. And I'm gonna select some kind of like bony color, something like that. And I know I'm still in the C-spheres, but it works. So just gonna fill that. All right. I don't know if you knew this, but you can actually fill C-spheres with color, with polypaint. Even though they're not polypaint or they don't have vertex colors, you can just paint or just assign a color. So you see now I have polypaint, and this is just spheres or C-spheres. Now the next thing I want to do is a pretty cool tip, and I'm not going to take the credit for this. I learned this a while back from Cord Papstein. Or Cord Papstein. Just a friend of mine that he does like really cool stuff, and actually he does a lot of like these sort of beluga dolphin type of creatures as well, like really awesome. So the trick is basically to I'll show you. So let's go ahead and get started. So I'm gonna click on C Sketch. So this is something that I use quite often to build volumes. So this is not the trick. I'll get to the trick in just a second, but if I go ahead and click on Edit Sketch, right, you'll see that the look and feel of the C-spheres changes a little bit, but now I can go ahead and if I click on Draw, I can go ahead and do this stuff. So that builds volumes really quickly, so I can literally just paint the muscles or sketch the muscles without necessarily committing to having a sculptable mesh. So this is still C-Sketch, which is an in-between C-spheres and real geometry. So I'll show you how that works in case you haven't used it, but all you have to do is, or all you have to have in order to use the C-Sketch is to have a C-sphere armature like I have here. Then I'm going to click on Edit Sketch and then make sure that I'm in Draw so that I can draw. And you'll see that the tools that I have for the C-Sketch are actually quite limited. So I'm going to click on this brush, and you'll see I have only these brushes. These are the only ones that are available to you for the C-Sketch, which, you know, they're pretty good anyway. All right. So like I said, you can just go ahead and click and drag and, you know, start doing all of these. But the trick here, or like what I found like really cool, and this is what I learned from Kurt, is that you can actually select a color. So I'm gonna go for some sort of muscly color, like a red muscly color, like so, right? So when you draw, it draws with that color. But then you can also go ahead and smooth things out to kind of like blend this piece into the mesh, and it's going to blend with the color underneath. So if I press the Shift key, you see it just sort of selects, I think, the smooth one. Yeah, so smooth one. So I'm gonna click Shift and start smoothing, and you see it's blending those that sketch bit with the C-spheres armature, but it's also adding that color. So it creates that gradient from red, like let's say a muscle color, into the beige color that I have for the bone. So it's kind of like creating that cartilage color. Anyway, so I think that's really cool. And I'm gonna just use something a little bit darker and more towards the orange color. And again, go to Edit. And I'm gonna show you how I use this. So I'm gonna start with a smaller brush size, just, you know, drawing bits and pieces. Let's say that this could be the deltoid, right? And I'll just do a few of these strokes in here, like that. And then I can get closer and hold the Shift key and start smoothing this out, right? So you see, it just creates a very interesting look. Let's do the same thing here for some muscles here at the back. So I'm literally just painting some ideas of course this is not perfect, but some ideas for the anatomy. So let's say if I want to have some kind of trapezius going here, I'm gonna undo that and do it with a larger brush size. Sometimes this smoothing is a bit tricky, depending on where you start smoothing. All right, so, you know, something like that is pretty cool. I'll do the same thing for, let's say, some kind of biceps like that. And you can play obviously with the size of your brush and create this multiple, cluster of muscles. Say, let's do the same thing for some kind of like triceps. And if you draw on top, it's just going to add volume to it, but they're like independent pieces, if that makes sense. I can spend a lot of time just playing around with the placement of these things and smoothing things out. And it's like I said, to me, this it kind of like works for this type of creatures. But if you're doing something more realistic, it is also a fantastic way of adding volume really quickly, because you're like just painting the volume. You don't have to. I mean, you could just use Dynamesh and then pull and push and sculpt. But I just think that doing it this way, I don't know, it saves you a little bit of time. It's just like placing the pieces of clay directly onto the armature. So if you're more used to like a traditional sculpt, that might be easier. All right, so let's say for some kind of pictorial area. I think when you smooth things out and things become like really large, it's trying to find some kind of like anchorage. So one way of solving that issue would be maybe to add more C-spheres in this area. And that way, when you smooth out, you have more of the armature, let's say, to sort of anchor to. All right. So you see, you see, it's becoming. You kind of like start to see a little bit of the anatomy, even though it's obviously creature and not necessarily a realistic anatomy. It has some hints of where muscles might be, and then you can just spend as much time as you want to just tweaking those and refining the volumes. All right, I'm gonna do with larger brushes some kind of like some kind of abs. And what I'm thinking is that this guy might not. I mean, I might not do the head of this creature straight from this set of sketch, or maybe I can. I mean, if I can just keep adding volume like that, I can just come up with something that looks kind of interesting. But it might be just the neck, and then we can work on the head separately. All right, let's work on those sort of these shapes that kind of like look like the legs. For the beluga whale. All right, so I think that's starting to look a bit more interesting. At least it gives you an idea of kind of like where I'm trying to go with this. Maybe we might need a bit more volume here, the chest. All right. And if you guys have any questions or anything, feel free to put them in the chat. I haven't looked at it. Okay, all good. Happens all the time. Yep, I think start stream. YouTube, you would have to restart the stream. Ah, okay. Yeah, no, it looks like it's working. I mean, doesn't really matter, you know who PavMike is, and maybe you know who I am. So I'll leave it at this. That's all right. So I was just trying to recreate with those bits and pieces this sort of shape around here. So this, I think it's a little bit more pronounced anyway. So I'll just add a bit more here. All right, and I think I need more of the abs are a bit more pronounced. All right, and let me just go ahead and do something here for the hand. Although I'm gonna stretch this out quite a bit. This is going to be more of a like a fin, but just to have something in there. All right, let me just push this out of the way so that you can see things better. The other cool thing that you can use with this technique, obviously I've been using only one brush, this sketch one, but you could use this armature or the bulge. The bulge is kind of like an inflate. If you use that one, it's going to basically create this inflation. I don't use that one as much unless I'm making something creepy. But the armature is really interesting because based on the camera allows you to get out, like you don't have to follow the armature of the creature. You can just do this type of stuff, and you see just that's actually not bad for what I'm trying to do, which is, let me just see. I'm just trying to create that sort of fin. So let's see if I do at a very small size, but it will do it based on the camera angle. So it will connect it though, so that's good. But I think it will be a lot easier if I just do what I'm doing. You know what? Let's just give it a go so that we can sort of complete this concept with the same sort of technique. But this is a good way of creating fingers and stuff like that. Maybe this could be some pseudo finger piece. I don't know. Yeah. Kind of hard to pick something. All right, let's say that we're happy with this. This is going to be the starting point of the sculpting process. What I can do though is, there's one thing to keep in mind. So if I go to, let's open up the adaptive skin and the unified skin. So these two processes, the unified and the adaptive skin, are basically to take anything that we've done in the Z-sphere world and the Z-sketch world and transfer it into a usable piece of geometry. Now, the thing is, if I click on preview of the unified skin, Let's click on that. You'll see that it gives me a preview, kind of like a Dynamesh object of whatever I sculpted with the with those sort of muscles, and it preserves the polypaint and all of that, but it is missing the actual armature. So if I go back, if I click on preview, you see it doesn't have that piece underneath, right? Which I kind of like, I don't need it, but I would like to have it. Whereas if I go with the adaptive skin or to the adaptive skin palette, it doesn't allow me to do anything. I'll have to turn off the sketch and preview this by itself. So there are two separate processes, or two separate, let's say, features or tools that you can use together. But then if you want to use them actually as a single piece, then you'll have to create a unified skin and an adaptive skin and then merge them together. So in practical terms, what it means is I can just go ahead and maybe reduce this Dynamesh resolution to something like that. So that's perfect. Let's click on Make Adaptive Skin. And that gives me a tool in here. So this is Adaptive Skin from the C-Sphere. Now I can go ahead and enable the C-Sketch to get into all of these pieces that I created. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to reduce the resolution, preview it. Oh, that's not good. I'm going to go for 200. I think the default is pretty good anyway. 256, I think it was. Again, it's just to get started with something. I'll probably change it quite a bit. All right, so I think I'm going to go for that. So with this preview, I want to click on Make Unified Skin. All right. So now I can get out of all of that. I can just leave the C-Sketch, it doesn't matter. So I have my C-Sphere. I could, if I wanted to, just go ahead and save this. So I can do a quick save, and it will save all the things that I've done with the C-Sphere and the C-Sketch all together, and the C-Sketch in one single tool. But then I have the adaptive skin, and then I have my unified skin. So I want to go ahead and click on copy. So to copy the entire subtool, go back in here and paste it. Let me just go ahead and check something quickly.